Tonight, we're going to be continuing in our foundation series, our study through the book of Genesis. Alright, so everyone, there should be a Bible near you. There should be a Bible near you, and notes and pens and pencils are being passed around quickly, speedily, mightily. Alright, so to start things off, I would like to tell you about this place. This is Lake Chelan. This is the place where my family, every summer, for as long as I can remember, ever since I was born, in fact, before I was born, my mom went to this lake with her family. So it's been like a 40-year tradition. It is absolutely great. And I'm going to tell you my favorite story, and then I'm going to tell you my favorite story from Lake Chelan, and then I'm going to tell you my favorite thing to do at Lake Chelan. So here's a story, one of my favorite stories, about my cousin Matt. Matt is insane like all of my cousins. Yes, question?
It looks more like Lake Chelan.
Well, it's not. Alright, so this is Lake Chelan. So, and Matt, like all my cousins, was a little wild, and we had a little tradition of, this is a dirty, nasty pillow, but oh well. We had a tradition of sleeping out, not in our campsites, but out in the lawn. Alright, so we slept out in the lawn, we slept out under the stars, it was great. We woke up the next morning and we started to make our way back to the camp. And there was this group of teenagers, like in between us and the camp. And we were walking by them and we saw that they were smoking. They're about your age and they're all smoking. They're just having a merry old time smoking. And my cousin Matt has his pillow. So here's this group of teenagers, and he walks up, and he's like, you know what, I need to teach these people a lesson about smoking. So he walks up to this lady, he flirts with her a little bit, and then he's like, you know what, it's not good to smoke. She's like, oh really? He's like, yeah, it's not good. And then he took his pillow, the next instant, and just went, BAM! And this cloud of smoke and knocked her over. He's like, don't smoke, it's not good. And he walked away. It was absolutely incredible. You know that picture of like that atomic bomb explosion has this big mushroom? Well, this is like a mushroom of smoke above this girl's head. It was so epic, it was glorious. She probably never smoked again. Alright, that is one of my favorite stories. The next thing I'm going to tell you is the favorite thing. I'm not going to hold this entire time. Alright, like minus. Alright, so my next thing I'm going to tell you is my favorite thing to do at Lake Chelan. My family has this humongous, this ginormous, this massive fun island. You guys know what a fun island is?
Yes.
This enormous raft that you can wrestle on. And my favorite thing to do is to go out with all my brothers and all my million cousins and go out on this raft and have a raging, all out, no holds bar, everyone versus everyone, King of the Hill death tournament. It is absolutely glorious. There are bodies bashing, there are bodies flying. It is absolutely wonderful. In order to win this death match, you have to be committed. You have to be willing to commit your body. You have to be willing to lose an arm and say, I don't care, I'm going to win. You have to be willing to go all out, totally, 100%. It is not crazy, it just makes sense. Alright? And you just have to go all out. Because if you do not go all out, you're like a sitting duck. You're going to get destroyed. You're going to get annihilated. It is not going to be fun. You might drown and die. So you must go all out or you are going to die. Now the great thing is sometimes my brothers or my cousins would bring somebody new. Some newbies that didn't really understand, that didn't really know, that didn't really know us. And we would tell them, you know what, you absolutely, totally need to go all out or you're going to die. And they didn't believe us and they didn't want to go all out because they still had that I just met you awkwardness. You know what I'm talking about? So you don't want to like drill someone you just met. So they're just like, they're a little timid, they're a little afraid, they didn't believe us and they didn't go all out and it was wonderful. Because there is nothing more joyous, there is nothing greater than just throwing your entire body at an individual, watch them quiver in fear, and then just totally deck them and throw them off the raft. There is no greater feeling in life than totally pummeling someone. It is wonderful, especially when you don't know them and probably won't ever see them again.
Yeah, football!
Yes, So it is so great. It is one of my favorite things to do. And needless to say, after a few minutes of being totally destroyed, the newbies learned a lesson. They learned that in order to survive, in order to win, they had to go all out, 100%, hold nothing back. Because if they didn't, they would be absolutely trashed. And just like the newbies had to learn that lesson, you and I, as Christians, have to learn a similar lesson. And the lesson is this. Anything less than total commitment to following and trusting God will always result in loss or regret. This is the main point of the message. Hopefully you hear this tonight. If you don't take away anything else, please hear this. Anything less than total commitment to following and trusting God will always result in loss or regret. It'll be just like you're a person on the raft that's timid and afraid, that's full of doubt. You will not achieve great things. All you will achieve is regret. All you will achieve is the ability to look back and say, wow, I wish I trusted in God. I wish I followed through. Tonight we're going to see in the life of Abraham, the story of Abraham, that anything less than total commitment to following and trusting God will always result in loss and regret. Go ahead and turn your Bibles to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12. In Genesis chapter 12, we're going to see three awesome things. We're going to see, first we're going to see Abraham's all-out commitment. He's a total example that we need to follow. And then right after that, we're going to see that he's also an example in some areas that we should never follow, because he exercises partial commitment. He says, I'll obey here, but I won't obey here. I'll trust you, God, for this. I'll say this about you, but over here, I won't trust you at all. I'll do it my way. So first we're going to see Abraham's all-out commitment, then we're going to see his partial commitment, and then we're going to talk about our commitment, your commitment to God. Where are you? Where am I saying to God, yes, I totally trust you. I'm willing to follow you. I'm totally committed in this area, but not in this area. First, we're going to see all-out commitment that's blessed, partial commitment that is not blessed. It only results in regret. And then our commitment. Where are we in our walk with Jesus Christ? So let's go ahead and look at verses 1 through 3. Here we go. Verses 1 through 3 of chapter 12. We're going to look at Abraham's all-out commitment. It says, verse 1, Now the Lord said to Abram, Go forth from your country, and from your relatives, and from your father's house, to a land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. And in all the families of the earth, you will be blessed. This is incredible. God comes to Abraham out of nowhere. We saw this last week. And God says to Abraham, give up everything for me. Give up your country. Give up your family. Give up your home. Follow me. Be totally and utterly committed to me. That's what God is saying to Abraham. He's saying, go, leave your place of comfort, leave what you are used to, and follow me. I know it's going to be hard. I know it is hard, but you need to be 100% committed to me. He also says, God also promises to Abraham a life worth living. What do I mean by that? He tells Abraham that he will live a blessed life, that God will be on his side, that God will care for him, that God will bless those who bless them and curse those who curse them. God is going to protect them. God is going to enable them to live a blessed life. And also, this is super cool, he's going to live a life that blesses others. What does that mean? That means that Abraham's going to, if he's following God, and he's going to live a life that people look at and say, that person, Abraham, he is a person who has made a real positive difference in my life. He is a person who has pointed me to God, to knowing God better, to following God better, to representing God better. That is what I think every one of us long to be. Every one of us want to be on fire for Christ, so on fire for Christ that people look at us and say, wow, you are a blessing to me. I look at you and I'm inspired to follow God more. God says that Abraham, God promises Abraham a life worth living, a blessed life, and a life that blesses others, which is what every single one of us want as a Christian. And what does Abraham do? What does Abraham do? Go ahead and look at verse 4. Verse 4. It starts out, we're going to stop right in the middle. It says, "So Abraham went forth as the Lord had spoken to him." What happens? Abraham goes, and Abraham is blessed and is a blessing to all. Abraham follows God. He says, "I am all about you. It is not about me. It is not about my wants and desires. It is not about what I think is best. It is about what God, what you think is best. I am going to do that. I am going to go to this land which I have never been before. I am going to obey you." And what is the result of that? The result of that is we're reading about him in here. The result of that is we're reading about him in Hebrews chapter 12, the Hall of Fame of Faith in your Bible, which says Abraham was a man of faith, and basically you need to act like he acted. You need to go like Abraham went. God gave him the command, he obeyed, and as a result, long term, he was blessed by God. He was blessed in his life, he was a blessing to those around him, long term, and eventually he's a blessing to us, because it is through the family of Abraham that Jesus comes. So Abraham follows God. He exercises all-out commitment to God, and he is blessed by God, and he blesses others. You and I have the same command. You and I, just like Abraham, are called to all-out commitment to God. You and I have commands from God. You and I have a mission from God. It says in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, "Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice." That's total commitment. That's all-out faith. That's 100% for God and not for ourselves. Acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. Next, it says in Matthew 10, 37 through 39, Jesus says this, and it's rather intense. "He who loves his father," this is Jesus speaking, "he who loves his father or mother more than me," more than God, more than Jesus, "is not worthy of me." If you're not 100% committed, if you're not all in, then you are not in at all. If you are partially committed, you are not in. "He who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." I hear that, I think of Elena and Big John, and I'm just like, "And he who does not take up his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who has found his life," basically is living for themselves, "will lose it. He who has lost his life," he basically gives it over to God, "he who has lost his life for my sake will find it." You and I are on the same mission, have the same purpose as Abraham. We are called to live all out, committed 100% to God, for him. Are you living that way? Am I living that way? Would someone else say that you're living that way? All out, totally committed. There's a man that I know that is living this way. His name is Chance. Chance Sumner. He was a guy I met in seminary, and he would do anything. He was just continually trying, continually living for God in such a visible way. He had this habit, this routine, every day in inner city Dallas, around the housing areas. He would walk through the housing neighborhoods, and he would pray for every single house that he went by. And if one of the people was outside of their home, let's say gardening, let's say mowing, let's say hanging out, he would go up to those people and he would witness to them, say, "I am praying for you, and this is why, this is what I'm about." He did not care if it was awkward. He did not care. He did not wait for them to ask what he was doing. He just went. Because why? Because God told us to do that. Because God told us to be a light unto the nations. Because God told us to witness. So that's what he did almost daily throughout the city of Dallas. Not only that, but I was running with him once, and we're running, and he saw this lady on a bench, and he just stopped running. I was like, "Dude, we're running." Like, for them. I'm pretty serious when it comes to workout. And he stopped and he just walked over randomly to this lady and just started talking to her about the gospel of God, about the grace that God had given to us through Jesus Christ. He was just completely all out. We played soccer on Fridays, and what did he do with all the players that were playing soccer with us? He was consistently inviting them to church. He was consistently telling them about Jesus Christ. He did not care how awkward it was. He did not care what people thought of him. He cared what people thought of God. And he lived a life that was so evident that he was all out committed to God. Would people say the same of me? Would people say the same of you? We have looked at Abraham. We have looked at the best part of Abraham in this story. And now we've seen that he is all out committed. He goes, he follows God. And now we're going to look at a part of the story that's hardly ever emphasized. We're going to look at where he exercises partial commitment. He says, God, I will serve you. I will obey you. I will love you. But over here, I don't really trust you. Go ahead and look at Genesis chapter 12, starting in verse 4. First he said, okay, here we go. Genesis chapter 12, verse 4. So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him. He obeys, he exercises all-out commitment. But look at the next phrase, it says, and Lot went with them! And Lot went with them! Do I need to jump higher? And Lot went with them! And you're like, so? Look at verse 1. Look at what God says to do. Look at verse 1. Now, the Lord said to Abraham, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house. He was not supposed to bring Lot. God wanted him to go on his own. God said, God knew that it would be hard. God challenged him. Abraham obeys. He demonstrates all-out commitment by going, but then he demonstrates partial commitment. Because he obeys the first part, go, but he doesn't obey the second part, which says, leave your relatives. Leave Lot, your nephew. Leave the people you know. Exercise complete dependence on me and go to the land that I have for you. He doesn't do it. Abraham takes Lot with him. He says, I'll obey in this area, but God, I'm finding it really hard to trust you on my own. I can think of a lot of good reasons why Abram took Lot. Probably the most likely reason is Abram does not have any children. Abram, we find out in Genesis chapter 11, his wife is barren and probably will never have children. She hasn't had children, will not have children. I don't think he's going to make that great. Abram was going to make that great of a nation, which is he and Sarah. Two people as a nation. That's not a very great nation, and that nation's not going to last long. So what does he do? Instead of waiting on God, instead of asking God, he takes Lot along sort of like an insurance. He says, God, I will trust you in going, but I can't leave everybody behind. It's just me and Sarah. How are we supposed to become a great nation with just the pair of us? We need Lot. A common practice back in those days was to adopt, a nephew or a relative as your heir. So he says, God, I trust you here, but I don't trust you here. He says, Abraham lets doubt turn him from all out to partial commitment in God. He says, God, I trust you here, but not here. This is too difficult. This is too big of a problem for you to solve. And I don't want to wait for your answer. And what's the result? Like every other result. The result is constant problems. Instead of Lot being a solution, if you continue on reading through the book of Genesis, as we will in later weeks, Lot becomes a huge problem for Abraham. Lot's men fight Abraham's men. Lot gets in trouble with a few kings, gets kidnapped. Abraham has to go rescue him. Lot gets involved with the wrong crowd in Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's just like problem after problem after problem. As a result of not trusting in God, as a result of not total commitment, but partial commitment, what does Abraham experience? He experiences loss and regret. Later on, he's going to be able to look back and say, wow, I just wish I trusted in God. I wish I waited for him to tell me what to do. It would have saved me so much headache. What's the result? It's constant problem. Next, keep on reading. Go ahead and go to verse 10. Not only does he despise the promise, or despise the promise of a great nation, but look at verse 10. He gets to the land, he explores the land, he goes from north to south, he sees all of the promised land, and then something, a challenge, I would call it, comes about. Look at verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land. There's a problem. Abraham is challenged. And what does Abraham do? He leaves the promised land. Look at the verse 10. It says, now there was a famine in the land, so Abraham went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. What does he do? He gets to God's promised land, and there's a problem with it. There's a famine in the land. And instead of waiting on God, instead of believing what God said in verse 2, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, I will protect you, I will keep you, instead of believing that, he says, oh no, there's a problem. I'm not going to turn to God. I'm not going to trust God. I'm going to run away from that problem as fast as I can. Abraham lets doubt turn him from all out to partial commitment in God. And what is the result? He goes down to Egypt and he experiences more problems. His problems aren't made better by not trusting in God. They're made worse. Let's go ahead and read about it in Genesis chapter 12, verse 11. We're going to read for a while. We're going to read from Genesis chapter 12, verse 11 all the way to 20. So here we go. It came about when he came near to Egypt that he said to Sarai his wife, see now, I know that you are a beautiful woman. This is sort of weird. This is not the type of husband you want. Here we go. He says, I know you're a beautiful woman. He starts out well, but then he gets a little weird. Verse 12. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please, say you're my sister. Nice, loving, strong husband. Say you're my sister so that it may go well with me because of you, and that I may live on your account. What is going on here? He's going down to Egypt, all right? He's going down and he remembers something about the Egyptians. He's like, oh, they may see my wife. And by the way, it's sort of strange. She's around 65 years old right now, and she's considered extremely beautiful. Well, let's take that back a little. I can understand that because their lifespans, as you might recall, are a little bit longer. So she's right about middle age. So she's like a 40. All right, she's a hot 40. All right, so here we go. So she's in that hot 40 stage, and he's like, well, you're in that hot 40 stage. They're going to take care of you, but I'm concerned about myself. They're going to hurt me. He totally forgets the promise of God. He totally doesn't trust in God. What does it say in verse 2? It says, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great. And so you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. He's basically saying, I will protect you. You have no need to fear. You have no need to doubt. I am with you. I have chosen you, Abraham. But instead of believing that, he contrives this weird, wacko scheme where he's going to call his wife his sister and let the Egyptians take him. Look at verse 15. 14. It came about when Abraham came into Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. Pharaoh's officials saw her, praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. So he lets his wife be taken in basically to Pharaoh's harlot, all right, to be used and abused by Pharaoh however he wants. Keep on going. Great husband. Verse 16. Therefore he treated Abraham well for her sake, and gave him sheep and oxen and donkeys and male and female servants and female donkeys and camels. You know how guilty Abraham must have felt? He gives his wife over to be used basically in a harlot, basically as a slut for Pharaoh. He gives her over and basically he's paid for her. You know, when he saw those animals, when he got those things, he must have felt so guilty. Nothing good is coming from his not trusting in God. Nothing good is coming from his not trusting in God. Keep on reading, let's see what happens. Verse 17, God does protect his own. Here it goes, verse 17. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai and Abraham's wife. Basically, God says, Abraham, you're not going to protect your wife. I am going to protect her. Verse 19. verse 18. Then Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she was my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go." Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they escorted him away with his wife and all that belonged to him. What came of Abraham's fear of the Egyptians? What came of all this contriving of this plan in his mind? What came of not seeking God for help? What came of not trusting in God completely? What came of not being all out committed to God? As instead of Abraham being a blessing to everybody at this time, instead of people being able to look at Abraham and say, that is a person who has made a positive difference, a real positive difference for God in my life, instead of being that person, he becomes the absolute opposite to the Egyptians. He becomes anything but a blessing to the Egyptians. When the Egyptians think of Abraham, they think of a person who follows a strange God that he cannot see and allows him to lie, treat his wife this way, and hurt a people group. He totally goes from having the ability to be a blessing to everyone to being an absolute curse, basically, to everyone. Why? Because he didn't trust God in the first place. He didn't believe any of the promises God gave him in verses 1 through 3. Yeah, he started well. He obeyed in this one area. He showed some all-out commitment. But in this area, and this area, and this area, all he showed was fear and doubt. And a belief that God wasn't real, that God could not take care of him, and God was not going to bless him. What comes from all of this? We need to talk about our commitment. Is your commitment like Abraham's at the beginning or at the end? Is your commitment full? Is your commitment 100% saying, I am going to live for God 24/7? Or is it, I'm going to live for God here, but not here? I'm going to trust God here, but not here. Let's talk about our commitment. I'm going to list a few things. Where do I let fear or doubt turn me from all out to partial commitment in God? Think about your life, the way you live, how a person would describe your actions. Are you reacting in fear or in confidence that God is behind you? Let's give us some scenarios. Scenario number 1. Maybe you're really good at staying away from profanity. You don't cuss, but your witnessing is non-existent. You can trust God not to swear, but you can't trust God to share your faith. Maybe you're really good at serving. Maybe you serve in VBS, maybe you serve in Awana, maybe you serve here at youth group, maybe you serve in someplace else. But prayer is something you just don't do. Because you can trust God that He's going to do something through you in service, but God doing something through prayer, that's just plain stupid. Prayer is what we do before we sing and after we sing. That's all it's good for. It's a filler. Maybe you're that way. Maybe you're really good at reading your Bible. You read it every time you log in. Alright? But you don't give. You can give some time to God. You can say, you know what, God? I'm going to demonstrate my all-out commitment to you by reading your word, getting to know you more, to know what you've done, to know what you will do. But giving to you is not something I do. You're supposed to give to me. Maybe that's an area where you're saying, I have partial commitment. Maybe you're really loyal to the church. You show up every Wednesday or Saturday or Sunday or whatever it is. But respect is something you want people to earn. Respect is something you want your elders to earn. Respect is something that you think needs to be given to you before you can give it to others. You have trouble trusting God with respecting people that you don't exactly agree with. I want you to think about your life. Where in your life are you experiencing this? Anything less than total commitment to following and trusting God will always, always result in loss and regret. Listen, playing it safe instead of obeying God, you will never look back on yourself and say, yes, I played it safe instead of obeying God and took a risk. You will always look back on that moment of safety and say, wow, I wish I actually trusted God in this moment. I wish I actually believed that He was real, that His promises are real. Because all that moment in time was just a waste. All of it is just a regret. I so wish yesterday. I so wish last week. I so wish last year that I took a stand for God and said I was all out committed to Him. Because all those moments that I didn't, they're all a regret. Let's go ahead. So God, you are a good and powerful God. And you have given us a challenge. A challenge to follow you. A challenge to say, I'm all out committed to you in everything we do, say, and think. But so often we say yes to God, and we say yes to you in this area, and we say, God, I don't really trust you in this area. Right now, think about those areas where you don't really trust Him. Maybe it's with your friendships. Maybe it's with your parents. Maybe it's with witnessing. Maybe it's with prayer. Ask God to give you the knowledge. Ask God to give you the faith. Ask God to give you the trust so that you can live a life that is all out committed to Him. God, we love you. We worship you. Your word is powerful. Please enable us through your Holy Spirit to live a life that others look at, that others see, and say, that is a person who's all out committed to God. They are living a blessed life, and they are blessing you. God, help us to be those people.